What's up, guys? This is Marcus from Pro Tools Expert, and today I've got myself a copy of Limited Max and Limited T by LVC-Audio. And at the time of this video that I'm doing, we're actually running these in our deal zone for the month. So feel free to check out a link in the video description of the details here. All right, so first off, we're going to have a look at Limited Max. And then after we have a look at Limited Max, we'll hop over to Limited T for a second and have a look at some of the different options that we have in that. Okay, so let's have a really quick go over the GUI here. So we've got a lot of things that we'd expect to see in a limiter. We've got our attack and release. Our margin is actually our output ceiling. We've got an amount that allows you to drive into the front end a little bit further. We've got a style, output gain. Now the style, when we have it all the way down, we're operating somewhere around a 20:1 ratio. And then when we bring it all the way up, we're back up to somewhere around infinity to 1. So that's a really hard limiter there. So I just like it where it's in default position here at 50%. And then really quickly, I'm going to go over everything here, but really quickly, I just want to hop over to this compressor here. Now what we have here is we have 3 different modes for the compressor. So we've got off mode, which it's currently set to. We've got dynamic, and then we've got deep. And what this is basically doing is it's giving you a layer of compression in between your raw signal, which is what's coming in, and then right before it hits the limiter stage, we're doing a bit of compression to do some either taming some dynamics, or if you really want to compress it and squash it, to drive it into the limiter. But I'm just going to leave this set to off here for the duration of this tutorial. All right, so let's have a look at the way we use Limited Max, because it's a little bit different than traditional limiters. So when you first bring it up, you'd think to yourself that you just start driving this here until you start seeing some limiting. And you could do that, but there's another way that the developer at LVC-Audio, I had a quick chat with him, and he's kind of devised this in a slightly different way. So what he recommends is that we basically make a program selection, and then we use this learn function so Limited Max can optimize the signal material that's coming in before it starts doing its thing. So I've got 2 completely different tracks here that we're going to be working with. Now the first one is just a rock track. It's a cue that a composer friend of mine wrote for a video production that I did, but it's got a really nice gritty tone, and I think it'll be really good to show what Limited Max can do on that type of material. And then I have something that's completely different, which is a jazz track. So first off, we're going to listen to the rock track. So I'm just going to hop over my marker here, and let's just play from here. And we're having to listen to just the track on its own. So it's a nice gritty track. Got some nice guitars there. Beefy kick, really punchy snare. Got some nice ambience. And what I'm doing here is I'm just going to send this out pre-fader to an auxiliary return here. And on this auxiliary return, I've got Limited Max. Now, I'm going to be doing some volume matching manually, but it's worth mentioning here that this plugin actually has an auto gain match built in. So you could actually do the auto gain from within the plugin, and then you can use your bypass to have a listen to what the actual limiting is doing to the signal. All right, let's just restore this to its factory default here, and we'll go through the basic setup here. Now, I want to be listening to the Limited Max version, so let's just scroll over to this track. And for now, I'm going to leave it set to 0, but I'm going to bring this down just so I can keep control of my outputs in a bit. So what we're listening to now is the Limited Max. We've got a couple cool different functions here. We've got this dynamic algorithm section, which allows you to drag this crosshair around. And all these different algorithms here, smooth, clean, aggressive, punch, they're doing a bunch of different things under the hood using internal side chains and saturators and soft clippers and all sorts of stuff. And we can make further adjustments to these different elements here, the dynamic limiting control and the dynamic transient control, by engaging these different buttons here. But I tend to just leave these on and let the plugin do its thing. So let's just make a little selection here. And what we're going to do now is we're going to let the plugin learn. So I've got this set to learn mode here, and now I'm just going to click play. And you're going to see it's going to start to adjust the trim until it's at the optimum level for Limited Max to start working with it. I'm just going to bring this down a bit. Okay. Now we've got that green icon lit here, which is telling us that it's found the optimum trim level for us to be working with. Okay, so now I just want to set my output level. I'm going to leave it set to 0.5. That works for me. It's also worth mentioning that as you bring this down further, for instance, if you were to bring it down to like all the way down to like minus 1.5, it's actually affecting what's going on with these particular elements as well. So let's just set this back to minus 0.5. And now I'm going to start driving some signal into it with the amount. I'm leaving everything else set to the default, and then we'll make some adjustments to the algorithms here. Get a little bit of limiting happening. Mess with our attack and release here. So you can see we got these different meters here. I can scroll through K20, K14, K12. I can adjust the scale if I need to see this better. I'll leave this set to off. And on this side here, we have different views available. So here we're looking at the reduction. I can look at the in, I can look at the intersample peaks, or the amount of distortion that's been added. And that amount of distortion there, that's an approximation there. It's not exactly accurate, but it's an approximation of how much distortion is being added to that. So we've got a couple other features here. We got this DC block, so we can block DC offset. We've got it set to low, mid, or high, or set to off. Then we've got oversampling. So I can go 2 times, 4 times, 8 times, or off. Let's just leave it set to 2 times here. And then if you really want to take care of some of the intersample peaks, you can engage this ISP squash. So let's start moving around this algorithm here and see if we can get a cool sound. You can hear the character change. So here we got a really aggressive sound happening there. We can actually make adjustments to the bass and the high. We can adjust the frequency that we want to make the adjustments at. So here we got 60 hertz and 6.5 kilohertz or 6500 hertz. So if you want to make any adjustments to the actual tone and what's happening with the track within it, you can use those there. Okay, so now let's have a quick listen to kind of a before and after. So we'll listen to the original, which I'll toggle to now. And then I'm kind of brought this down quite a bit so we can gain match it. So we can really listen to them at a matched level. That's the original. Adding a lot of punch. We're not going crazy on the gain reduction, but we're getting quite a bit. Can make adjustments here. If I want to change the speed of the scrolling. Then we've got some things like a dither built in and whatnot. So that's basically a quick overview. And the last thing I need to mention here is that we have this look ahead function so that you can activate it if you want to engage look ahead mode. All right, so now let's pop into something that's a totally different style of track here. This will be a jazz track. Let me just close this plugin down here for a second. And let's listen to it quickly on its own. So this is just a live off the floor recording that I did, and this is a pretty dynamic master, and I've got it set to be limited at -3 decibels true peak, and I mixed it to be a -16 integrated loudness level. So now let's listen to what the limited max can do on this one. I'm going to bring this up. Let's solo this track, and let's bring this actually back to its factory default. Now, when I'm making my adjustment here, what I tend to do is when I use the learn function here, I try to grab something that's at a louder part because I don't want to grab a really quiet passage and have it add a bunch of trim that isn't needed. So I'll grab something that's kind of an average loud level, like, so maybe something like this would be okay. So we'll just start playing from here. Click the learn. Just gonna bring the level down. Okay, so it's settled on a level there, 4.71, and I can make adjustments to that manually if I need to. So now let's just dial in an algorithm that works and start pushing some input gain into it with the amount control here. The auto gain here. So this is the signal bypassed. We have that brief moment where it needs to adjust for the volume. Make adjustments to my out gain as a kind of like a trim as well. I kind of like it there. And if we want to do a really quick before and after with our original, let's just select these two. So now we are listening to the original track. Back to the original. Limited max version. So there you go. This is a pretty transparent sounding limiter, and got these cool little functions here which allow you to kind of dial in different types of tone depending on the program that you're working with. Now let's have a look at limited T. Now, as I was mentioning before, limited T is kind of a stripped down version of everything, and we actually have some additional controls there as well. So let me just make sure I'm in loop mode here. Yep. And this kind of allows you to dial in some really different tones. So we've got the usual parameters that we have on limited max. We've got a trim, tack, release, link, out clip. We've got our out gain, our style, our amount. We've got this mid-side adjustment here, mix, scale for moving things up and down here. But this is where things get a little different. We have these different preamp models that the developer's borrowed from some of his other plugins in his lineup. And we can really dial in some different types of sounds here. So let's have a really quick listen to this bypass. So this is a drum loop that we're working with. Probably just need to turn this down a bit. Whoops, back here. Okay, so that's the dry drum loop here. So we've got mix, we've got that set to 100%. So you can dial in the amount of mix you want there when you have it in line. Some adjustments to the scale here. You can drive this a little further, bring the out down a bit. Now watch what happens here when I start moving through these different preamp models. Pull back the drive. tape. You can really hear it in the kick there. Then, of course, we've got our auto gain feature, which is going to match our gains. And then we have the same thing here. We can move this over to start to dial in different tones here. We got a lot of punch. This is vintage. Now, these aren't the exact same algorithms that we have in Limited Max, but they're variations on those algorithms and slightly different. But we have the added bonus of the preamp models that we can use to drive different characters for the tone. Now, the only other thing I haven't talked about here is mid-side. So when you have mid-side mode engaged here, you have the ability to offset which signal the limiter is affecting. So you can have it either affect the mid or the side, or you can set a balance in between them there. So it doesn't give you independent controls of each the mid or the side, but you can offset what limited T or limited max is doing to any signal that you're passing through it. So there you have it. That's Limited T and Limited Max by LVC-Audio and available in our deal zone for this month. I hope you guys got something from this, and we'll talk to you later. Cheers.